Happy Monday. Hope you're all doing really well. We are nearly at the end of the opening Premier League weekend, and of course Chelsea starting off their 25-26 campaign at home to Crystal Palace yesterday. And it wasn't a result we wanted. We've already done our review, so if you want to go and check out the specific match review, go and check that out. It'll be up in the cards for you to check out and engage with if you haven't already. This is going to be a new segment I'm bringing to the channel and the podcast this season, kind of an extra match review segment where we break down some of the key talking points from the game, maybe in a little bit more depth, or things that kind of are a bit broader for Chelsea, maybe even some stuff that isn't solely related to Chelsea and have kind of been controversies from the game. One specific one today that I want to give my thoughts on, and some other stuff as well. And at the end of today's show, going to get some of your main takeaways from the game on Sunday that I requested on Twitter. Please like, subscribe. We may call this hot takes, we may call this main talking points, things we learned. You can let me know down in the comments below, but I want to hear your thoughts on the topics we break down in today's show. If you like the sound of that, if you want to get more Chelsea content from SonOfChelsea, please do like, subscribe, share this video around with friends, all of that good stuff. The first point, the first topic today is a sluggish start for Enzo Fernandez. It was not a good start to the season for Enzo Fernandez, and it kind of picks up where he left off against AC Milan, where people have kind of picked up that didn't start that well in that game in a preseason friendly, but you kind of shrug it off and go, well, it's a preseason friendly. You know, I'm sure when the serious stuff gets going, he will rediscover his form. Not the case. It was a quite concerning day for Enzo Fernandez. He just looked completely off the pace, really. He was slow on the ball, didn't impact the game as much as we have seen him in recent months, which is, I think, a real concern and just frustrating, because when you know how good Enzo Fernandez can be, we're not really seeing that. And I think in combination with this, the difference for Enzo Fernandez at Chelsea this season compared to last is he has serious competition in central midfield for that role. And I think most obviously is Andre Santos, who came off the bench. And you know, I think maybe a hot take could be that is Andre Santos going to usurp Enzo Fernandez by the end of the season? But what I would say is about Enzo Fernandez, it is only one game. We cannot have, and for Enzo Fernandez, if he wants to be considered one of the best players at Chelsea, one of the best players in the Premier League, we can't be waiting till November, December to see the best of him. It can't take him 2, 3, 4 months to get going each season. He's played a lot of football, but others have as well. And I also think there is probably a conversation about his physicality, his mobility, and that needing to get better for Chelsea, especially in a concern of maybe being hit on transition. And when you have Santos, a talent like Santos on the bench, people, if these performances continue, will be asking for him to start instead of Enzo Fernandez. So I think Enzo really needs to take a real leading role in his Chelsea team, which I think at his best he did. And if you saw my pre-season kind of Chelsea predictions, I predicted Enzo Fernandez as my player of the year. So not a good start. And when I'm judging my player of the year on, you know, every single week you're turning up, kind of one red mark against him already. So unfortunately, it was not a good start for Enzo Fernandez. Number 2, though, is the positive of the game. I think it really is the big positive, and it was the positive in those preseason friendlies. It's the thing that I think is exciting so many fans at the moment, and that is, of course, the Premier League debut of Estevao Willian. Now, we did not get the dream goal, the winner, that maybe we hoped for, but I do think the point to make here is Estevao is ready to start. I think he is ready to start for Chelsea, and I think that the impact and influence he had from a very short period of time, taking on several players, dragging players towards him and keeping a hold of the ball down that right wing, which opens up space for, say, Cole Palmer, who we saw both him and Estevao having quite a nice connection in that Bayer Leverkusen friendly. In a game where Chelsea had such little verve and kind of energy to them, it was so clear how different Chelsea looked just by the introduction of Estevao. He didn't fix everything, but he fixed a lot. And I think the excitement moving forward is what that could be from the off, really, against, say, West Ham, a load of opponents, and giving an opponent more to think about over a longer stretch of the game, and hopefully giving Estevao a bigger platform to show his talent. So I feel, for me, the connection with Palmer, dragging players to him, not looking at all fazed by the physicality. I think that's exactly what Crystal Palace wanted to do, try and boss him and muscle him out of the game. And that just simply wasn't happening. And there was one particular burst very early on down that right wing that I think got the crowd up and excited in what turned out to be quite a frustrating day. So for me, Estevao is ready to start. Do you agree with that? I think most people will. I saw in the comments of my Palace preview, people already wanted him to start. And I think based on what happened, based on his impact off the bench, I think that is going to be a likely shout heading into the West Ham game and probably beyond. The third point is kind of the non-Chelsea point, but of course it does relate to this game, and that is VAR drama and VAR, I guess, scandal, and were Palace robbed, as some people have put on social media. I think the distinction with this one here is the difference between is the call actually right based on the letter of the law versus the application of that law being brought in by the PGMOL on a consistent basis. And that's where I have a lot of sympathy. I think it's a foul. And of course I'm going to say that because I'm a Chelsea fan, and of course it benefited us because we didn't concede a goal. However, if I watch the replays, if you watch the replays, if you look at where that ball goes, Guehi taking out basically and moving Caicedo across means that ball, the trajectory of that ball goes straight into the goal. So obviously that impacts the move, that disrupts, and he's interfering with the defence, the wall that's been put up there, and that is why VAR overturned it. So by the letter of the law, of course, I think it's the right decision. The controversy, and I think the frustration, rightly so, and I talked about this on Sunday's show, is will this be consistent? People have already picked out several examples from last season where this wasn't the case. I think a Man United goal from, I think it was a Fernandez free kick against Arsenal last season at Old Trafford, where something similar happened and it wasn't picked up on. Also, Chelsea, I think Reece James, his free kick against Bournemouth, I don't know if it was Jackson or someone else who was disrupting the Bournemouth all late on, that wasn't picked up. And that is the thing that absolutely you have a valid argument for. Palace being robbed, I mean, it makes it sound like this is the most scandalous decision of all time, and, you know, what did Mark Guehi effectively, and Palace did nothing wrong in this sequence of events. I mean, they fouled. It's just on this specific occasion, VAR decided they weren't going to watch Netflix, they were actually going to watch the game, and they overturned the decision, and obviously it benefited Chelsea. I think that the big thing will be, is there going to be consistency? And I cannot back the PGMOL to be consistent, and probably it backs up as well kind of a summer of Palace feeling like they're being treated differently to maybe other clubs. So I understand the frustration of Palace fans. I cannot believe it's being robbed. I think it is, by a letter of the law, a good decision, but do we trust this current cast of officials to keep that going, and will it actually negatively impact Chelsea? Because we know how football can be ironic sometimes, and I'll be sat here being more of the mindset of a Palace fan in weeks to come, probably. The fourth and final one is about the centre-back conversation not going away. It really isn't. Despite a clean sheet, and despite, I think, credit going to both Trev Chalobah and Josh Acheampong, who I thought does deserve a lot of credit, in terms of Chelsea signing a centre-back, in terms of what Enzo Maresca is asking his sporting directors, Chelsea, to do for the rest of this window, that conversation is not going away because Levi is not coming back anytime soon. And the big debate going on is, do we have the mentality, the character back there to lead a defence over a long period of time? I have made several podcasts on this, and you know, if you've listened to those podcasts, I have leaned on the side that I do think we have sufficient depth options, and the risk of going into the market and spending on someone who actually isn't significantly better than just trying to develop Josh Acheampong, even Jarell Hatto potentially being moved into a left centre-back role. And as well, Tosin Adarabioyo, I think, in terms of line-breaking passes, I mean, he didn't play yesterday, so we'd have to wait to see how that goes as well. I think him coming back into the team could be positive, along with Wesley Fofana. I mean, if Fofana can, which he hasn't been able to, keep himself fit, I know he's not a left centre-back, but we're talking more about a central centre-back in that back three in possession, who's going to be able to take the ball out, be commanding with it, and get Chelsea further up the pitch with progressive passes. So it's not like we have no options. George Smiley, an account I definitely suggest you go and follow, Chelsea account, bringing up the point that it's not that there aren't any options, and the options I've spoken about is, you know, Murillo, Branthwaite, Guehi, who of course played against Chelsea yesterday and of course was once of our academy. But there are other options. Piero Hincapié, of course, from Leverkusen, who played against Chelsea quite recently and of course has been a very decent defender for them in the Bundesliga. Antonio Silva at Benfica, another centre-back who I think has been linked to Chelsea multiple times, nothing like substantial, but another European centre-back in a top European league that has been talked about a number of times at a big club. The last one is one that you could see happening purely because of maybe the barriers for it to happen before the end of this window if you're purely looking at a short-term signing, and that is Aymeric Laporte at Al Nassr with a loan option potentially to get him from the Saudi League back into the Premier League. Very experienced Premier League defender, and of course someone who is integral to, of course, Pep Guardiola's best years at Man City. So there are options there, and the longer Chelsea don't win games, it's very simple, the conversation will continue. And that will remain a problem, especially if Chelsea, in terms of their fluidity, don't look as seamless as they did in the Club World Cup and in some of those pre-season games, which we didn't have Colwill for. I mean, if you're going to reference the good performances from the last two pre-season games, we didn't have Colwill for either of those. However, there are concerns about this, and that kind of conversation is not going away. And it's quite clear Maresca's stance, and whether that stance from Maresca is going to push Chelsea to act. However, it seems like at the moment it's not going to push them to act. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, because at the moment it seems like Chelsea are kind of taking the view that they have the options, they have the players there, and it's for Enzo Maresca and his coaching staff to work with them because they have built a squad capable of dealing with an injury to Levi. So there we go. Let's go through, before we wrap up, here's some of your thoughts. I put out this on Sunday night, just key takeaways from the Palace game. Let's run through some of them. Craig here puts, still can't break down a team that just wants to sit back and counter. I think that's absolutely a fair point. It is something that is going to be make or break for Chelsea's season. Chelsea's aspirations of not just being a Champions League qualifying team, but potentially, very much challenging at the top of the Premier League. We simply have to do it. Burko here says, goals are going to be an issue. We have lost two of our biggest attacking threats and replaced them with players who aren't as dangerous. We need Garnacho as our wingers, don't score, and our strikers are a gamble as to if they can step up to the level needed. I assume you're talking about Nicholas Jackson and Noni Madueke, two players who I referenced that point specifically, that they were productive players in recent Chelsea seasons, and you take both of those players out, you are then banking that you're new signings, but also just the collective of your attacking threats are going to make up for that. However, it is one game, and it is against a side like Crystal Palace, who I do think were just very well disciplined. It's one of those points that I think you'd have to wait 5 or 6 games to make a judgment that is the case. It's one game, yeah, it's 0-0, we haven't scored, and yeah, we did look a bit toothless, we did look a bit aimless. However, we have West Ham on Friday. And given the state of West Ham currently, if Chelsea turn up, play their best, and suddenly are putting like 3 or 4, over West Ham, and we're comfortably going on to win, and then we beat Fulham, and we go into the international break feeling better, Xavi Simons comes through the door. I mean, the narrative can very quickly change. And, João Pedro started his Chelsea career on fire. I think Liam Delap has a lot to offer. I think Estevao obviously has a lot to offer. Cole Palmer will have a lot to offer over the course of the season. Jamie Gittins, yeah, not a great Premier League debut, but does that mean that that's it now? That's his level? I think that's just, I'm not going to take that view. It is a risk, but it's something that is only going to come to light over the course of the season. And it's a long-term discussion that we're going to have. OD here says, Gittins needs time to adapt. Agree with that. Estevao is a starter. Josh can do the job. Palmer needs competition. I think I agree with all that, to be honest. Ed here puts, midfield is a problem with Enzo next to Caicedo, and we soon going to see Andre take his place. Jackson will be our first choice striker before November if he stays at the club, and Estevao will adapt quicker than Gittins. Jackson remaining, just to make it clear, if you thought that Nicholas Jackson wasn't in the squad because of his current situation at Chelsea, no, well, maybe, but he was suspended for Sunday's game, so that's, even if Maresca wanted to put him in the squad, he couldn't have, obviously, because of that red card he got against Newcastle at the end of last season. If he stays, yeah, I think that'd be a very exciting battle between 3 strikers, but I'm not entirely sure it is. And I think that, yeah, that midfield balance issue, we've talked about it before, and whether, Enzo, Caicedo, is that a stable enough midfield duo when you do have the mobility of Andre Santos as well, and how Maresca is going to kind of deal with that over the course of the year is going to be a fascinating one. Final one here from Kings Road Shuttle. They now serve Madri. Finally, Singer is gone. We can rejoice. I think that is one of the most positive things. I mean, I didn't have any, but I am a fan of a bit of Madri, so I'm happy that. Yeah, I mean, Singer was one. No one is missing Singer at the Bridge, I have to say. So there we go. That is today's show. Please let me know your thoughts on the new format in the comments below. Give me your thoughts on some of the takeaways and the topics we discussed. I'll be back again very soon. Just a kind of an update. I'm going to be away on holiday this week. So, but there will be hopefully one podcast dropping, and it does relate to Chelsea signing someone. So hopefully if that does develop and I can drop that podcast, that will be coming to you. But I will be back in time to give you my thoughts, and hopefully this kind of format again on over the weekend after it of the West Ham game. So coverage of the West Ham game is still going to be here next weekend. So thank you for watching, for supporting, for listening, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you again very, very soon. All the best.